dance in the lights of the sun, vibration of a thundercloud.
Hello, loved ones. This is Matt Stevens, and this is the My Sober Addiction Podcast. And we are happy, healthy, wealthy, and free. Yes, loved ones, we are. And, by the way, I am going to start with a quote. I know that's nothing new. You know, Matt loves his quotes. That's all right. Don't judge me. So anyway, don't tell me what to do either, Matt. Anyway, this quote is by Deepak Chopra. I have a, complicated relationship or feelings about Deepak Chopra, in that his spiritual teachings, the things he talks about, are very profound, and at the same time, he keeps it simple. He keeps it in bite-sized pieces that are easily digestible, and then he will take you step by step through what he is teaching. The things that he teaches are very, very good, and also the way he teaches them is also very, very good. However, my feelings towards him are, I guess I'll question his motivation, or maybe it's more his associations. Some of the organizations and people that he is associated with, maybe it's a little bit sketchy at best, right? I mean, it's kind of like, even like with Sadhguru, you know, some of the people that they associate with are big depopulation people, for example. And I'm like, how do you propose we do that? So there are things like that I'm just kind of like, I don't know. Some of the things you're associated with, I'm not a fan of. But anyway, as far as his spiritual teachings are concerned, Deepak Chopra is on point. So anyway, the quote is, "For every choice we make, there is another possible choice that leads to a different version of ourselves." At that point, I'm going to ask you, dear loved one, a question. Do you believe in multiple dimensions or multiple realities? Because this quote suggests just that. This is, for every choice we make, there is another possible choice that leads to a different version of ourselves, which implies that we have many, many versions of ourselves. Like, where are these versions? Well, that's where the alternate realities or whatever would be. And I mean, and even in physics, in quantum physics anyway, there is the many worlds theory, which is becoming very widely accepted. There are a lot of quantum physicists who accept the many worlds theory, meaning every time a choice is made, there's a branch. And my question, I guess, is how significant of a choice does it have to be? Can it be as simple as if I picked up the ink pen with my left hand or with my right hand? The theory suggests is that every time I make a choice, I have a split in my reality. In one reality, it picked up the pen with my left hand. In the other reality, I picked up the pen with my right hand. And then both of those go off on their own, and then they also have their own branches, and those also have their own branches. So you can see how this could turn into, quadrillions of possibility of versions of you. Then I ask the question, maybe it's not the little things such as which hand I picked up a pen with, and maybe it's more of the bigger choices, right? The really life-changing choices. Maybe those are the ones that cause my timeline or whatever to split, or my realities to split. But then again, I'm like, then who decides what is a big choice and what's not? Because then I go back to the principle of polarity in the Kybalion, where it says that if something's hot or cold, at what point does hot become cold, or what point does cold become hot? Somewhere in the middle, it all blurs, and you can't tell. So then I'm like, okay, fine then. So what that means is that there is no way to determine what is a big choice and what's not. Where do you draw the line? So then I'm like, well, okay. So then what I'm left with is either there are like quadrillions of possible parallel universes or realities, and that's just based on my own life. And then there would be that many more for your life. Or none of that's true. Well, okay. So what are we really looking at here? Well, what we're really looking at are how choices affect our lives. And then how it relates to drug addiction, for example. You know, I had a conversation with my dad when I was struggling to get sober. And I told him, look, nobody chooses to be an addict. Nobody goes into this thinking, I'm going to get strung out on dope. I'm going to be a heroin addict and whatever. Nobody does that. What they do go into it as a means of coping with something. Like in my case, I was dealing with a very painful time in my life. It was out of my control. It was something that someone else was doing that was affecting me and making life very hard. I'm not going to get into the details of that. It's not what's important. We've all got our own story. Most people would understand just based on what I've said there. Somehow, a few pills found their way into my hand, and I took them just to kind of catch a buzz. And I found that they were a perfect way of escaping the things that were bothering me. And then time goes by. Next thing you know, I'm on heroin. So, and that's how it goes. Nobody set out to be a heroin addict. It just kind of happened. But it did ultimately happen from choices that I made. And I say that because a lot of people get offended when you hear quotes like, you are exactly where you are because it's where you have chosen to be. And people get a little butthurt over that. And I'm like, well, listen, I would have never chosen this. To which I'm like, yeah, they're not lying. They wouldn't have chosen that. Nobody would have chosen that. So maybe it's more of a poor choice of words when people say you're exactly where you are because it's where you've chosen to be. It's like, no, I didn't choose it. I would have never chosen this. Well, it's the choices that you have made that led you to this. Now that is a little bit more acceptable. That people can be like, well, okay, fine. I'll take that. Okay, you're right. Choices that I made led me to this. But don't say that I chose this. Oh, but then there's the other side. There's another. The plot thickens, loved one. Because then you've got some who will say, well, our purpose as the divine spark of the Creator is to have experiences. In fact, the Creator is through us, or as us, having every type of experience that ever could be experienced. And that includes being a heroin addict. That includes everything that you have gone through. So in that case, you could say, okay, so what you're saying is, before I incarnated in this life, I said, I'm going to go and incarnate and be a heroin addict. That again is another one that's like, yeah, I don't know about that. But then again, when we look at the cosmic scale, we think, okay, universe is supposedly 13 billion years old. Well, okay, then these 80 years or 100 years or whatever this lifetime is going to be, that's nothing. That's not even a blip on the radar. So it's like, yeah, you go and live out that quick lifetime there, that tiny little blip on the radar, and you can cross that experience off of your list. Again, I'm not sure I can accept that. But maybe. But regardless of that, it's like, well, okay, fine. Whether that's true or not, whatever. What really matters is here we are now, and we're navigating this lifetime. We're getting through this life. And for now, this is all I got. And I've got to make the most of it. So what you've done is you found drugs, coped with whatever it was you were coping with, and now you've gotten sober. Congratulations. Now what? So regardless of whether or not my timeline has split a quadrillion times, or regardless of whether I chose this pre-incarnation, or regardless of any of that, here I am, dealing with life. Oh, and by the way, there's also the issue of emotional and also, I believe, spiritual maturity. We talked about this before, but I'll run through it again because I feel like it's a very important topic, especially for the loved ones of addicts. When you have an addict in your life and you are trying to figure out what they're going through. You see, when someone begins using drugs, let's say at the age of 20, and every time something happens, every time an issue or problem or whatever pops up in their life, instead of dealing with it, instead of facing it, dealing with it, gaining some experience or gaining some knowledge or some maturity from it, instead of doing those things, they go and hide behind drugs. That's what I was doing. I was going through a very painful time in my life, and it was much easier to just go and get high than deal with it. I know the problem is, and most people are going to sit there and say, well, that problem's still going to be sitting there waiting for you when you get back. You're right. You're absolutely right. That's why you go and get high again and again and again. Anyway, so the person at the age of 20 begins using drugs, and every time something pops up, they go and use drugs. That's how they cope. Then, let's say for whatever reason, at the age of 30, they get sober. Well, that's great. But here's the problem. Now they're 30 years old, and they have not gained any maturity for the last 10 years because they haven't dealt with anything. They've just gone and hid behind drugs. So now they're sitting here, a 30-year-old, with the maturity level of a 20-year-old, and have 10 years worth of issues that they've never dealt with staring them in the face. No wonder relapse rates are so high, huh? Then I asked the question, will we ever catch up with our actual age, with our maturity level? It's like, well, yeah, probably, I think. I mean, like, let's say, for example, with that 30-year-old, it takes that person 5 years to go through all of those issues that they avoided for 10 years. And they're dealing with stuff from the, real time also. So let's say that happens. So let's say at the age of 35 now, this person has finally dealt with everything that had to that happened from the time they were 20 till now at 35. Have they caught up in their level of maturity with their actual age? I don't know. Probably. Maybe not fully. But they've definitely made up some ground, I got to believe. But that will tell you why it's so hard to cope, especially in those first few years of sobriety, because you've got so many issues. Like in my case, I had some credit issues out there that I had to deal with. You strung out on dope, you don't pay your bills. Come on. But when you're trying to get your life back on track once and for all, you deal with those things. You find out, okay, who do I owe money to? Capital One? Okay. Right? Just for example. So then you deal with those things. So I got to believe you do make up some ground. Getting back to the choices thing. So the choices that we've made led us to where we are. And then I think, well, what if I hadn't made those choices? What would have happened if that one time back let's say the 5-year mark for the 20-year-old. Let's say that one time back at the 5-year mark where my family had an intervention and they got me into rehab. And what if I had stayed sober at that point? Is there a version of myself somewhere out there that did? And what's that person's life like? What's that version of me? How's that guy living? I mean, it's maybe fun to think about. But again, here we are. We're dealing with this life and what's going on in it. So with the whole thing about other possible choices leading to different versions of ourselves, yeah. But then there's also people who will say that you can quantum jump and embody those other choices. Meaning there is a version of you out there who invented some fantastic app, let's say at the age of 19, and life got really good, you never discovered drugs, and you're ultra successful, whatever. That version of you is out there. That version of you never used drugs. That version of you has had a fantastic life. So then it's like, well, if I can quantum jump, then why can't I quantum jump and be that guy? Well, I think it's because that guy is not you. Oh, the plot thickens real good now, doesn't it? Because whether we want to admit it or not, the drugs played a part in us becoming who we are now. I can't imagine who I would be or what I would be had I never discovered drugs, particularly heroin. I can't imagine. Would I have been a better version? Would have been a better me? Maybe. I don't know. Is that version of me out there? Maybe. I don't know. If I was able to make that quantum jump, let's say all of this is true, and at that time that I chose drugs, there's another version of me that did not. And that one version of me went on. And then let's bring in this whole quantum jump thing, whether you can quantum jump into being that person. Let's pretend I could do that. Would I want to? Would I really, truly want to? I know that it's kind of selfish of me if I say no, I would not. Because I put my family through hell. I put people who love me through a lot of hell during my time in addiction. So it would be selfish of me to say, if I could wave a magic wand and be that person who never used drugs, would I do it? If I say that I would not do that, that's kind of selfish, because that's saying, okay, so what you're saying is you're okay with the hell you put your family through. And I'm like, no, I'm not okay with the hell I put my family through. I'm not. So where does that leave me? Does that mean, so what you're saying is that you would wave that magic wand? Well, no, I'm not saying that either. Because for one, I did make it through addiction. I did come out on the other side. I am sober. I'm a champion of sobriety now. And I love my life now. And it would have been much different had I never found drugs. In what ways would it have been different had I never found drugs? I don't know. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little curious. But would I change and do that? As selfish as it may be, me saying that I wouldn't. I wouldn't. Because right now I have a better relationship with my family than I could ever imagine having. I think my relationship with my family, particularly my kids, is better now, I guess, than it would have been. But then again, it's like, well, how can you know? Well, you can't. But here's what I do know. I love my relationship with my family now. And I do hate the fact that I put them through absolute hell. I do hate the fact that I lied to them and just, you know, whether you are an addict or you're the loved one of an addict, you know. I realize I'm preaching to the choir here when I tell people the hell that addicts put their family through. And I also know it could have been far worse. I mean, I survived. I don't even know. I lost count how many people I was in rehab with that are no longer with us. I lost count. I would venture to guess that far more than half of the people I was in rehab with are now dead. Overdoses. I guess that can be my little saving graces. Well, at least I didn't die. At least I didn't put my family through the ultimate hell. That doesn't make it okay. But anyway, the version of myself that I am now, I'm good with it. I've got a great life now. And it is a life that I could not have on drugs. I have an amazing woman. She loves me, and she loves everything about me. She's perfectly fine with the fact that I was strung out on dope. She accepts the fact that I am a drug addict in recovery. But my point is, I couldn't have a relationship like this if I was still like that. in that situation, only kind of relationship you can have are codependent. But whatever. I'm not getting into that right now. We've talked about codependence before on here. I know that I've talked about a few out there kind of things with the quantum jumping and the multiple timelines and the multiple realities and all of that. And I guess my point is, if all those things were true, what difference does it make? Would you right now today choose that? If your higher power said, I'll tell you what, right now, make the choice. Do you want to erase all of this? Like it never even happened. I can wave a magic wand and we will set you on the trajectory that you would have been on had you never used drugs. I'm like, well, what does that mean? What would have happened? It's like, well, you're going to have to find out. Like in my case, hell, I might have still ended up dead because, at the time I was eating my feelings. I was grossly overeating. I'd gained a crap ton of weight. And I'd probably be dead now from having a heart attack because I was eating like crazy and I was smoking a crap ton of cigarettes and I was stressed out. So are you saying drug addiction saved your life, Matt? No, I'm not. Don't anybody put those words in my mouth. I kind of heard that going on. I'm like, so what you're saying is, well, no, that's not what I'm saying. But anyway, dear loved ones, that's what I got. Actually, that's not it. But on the YouTube channel, by the way, I've been talking more about the metaphysical and nature of reality and consciousness and awareness and all of that. So I'm like, well, and it's been fun. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, please do so. I'm kind of at a point now where I was like, well, I've kind of gotten away from talking about addiction. And while it's like, okay, well, yeah, I feel like that's a natural progression in that at some point you move on with your life. At some point you're like, yeah, that was a chapter of my life or whatever you want to call it. But now I am doing something else, right? So it's like at some point, do I stop talking about addiction entirely? And I kind of had. But I'm thinking, well, on the audio podcast, I am going to get back to talking more about addiction. Now, understand, I'm still Matt Stevens. I'm still going to talk woo-woo. I'm still going to get out there. I am still going to talk about all the weird stuff. Don't worry. I'm really kind of thinking about the Mandela effect and how it relates to our perception of reality. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But I'm still going to talk about the nature of reality and all of that good stuff. But on the podcast, I am going to get back to talking about addiction. Even though I have said recently that I realize I have gotten away from it. And I even try to defend myself a little bit or justify it or whatever you want to say by saying at some point you got to put that behind you and move on. And that is true. But I also know that I've still got a lot more to say with regards to addiction. And I'm aware of the fact that there are a lot of people out there who are new to sobriety. And if so, welcome. Love to have you. And it's not going to be easy. Lean into this podcast, lean into the people around you who support you, because it's not easy. But anyway, I realize there are still people who are new to sobriety. I realize there's a lot of people who are coming into the community now who are coming off of straight up fentanyl. See, when I got sober, fentanyl was coming online. In fact, that big overdose that I had, I believe, was laced with fentanyl. But I mean, there's no way to know. But when I got sober, fentanyl was, it was coming along, but not like, it was still heroin, but it was a little like fentanyl in it to kind of bump it up a little bit. Now they don't care anymore. They just sell straight up fentanyl, which is crazy. But anyway, those of you who are new to sobriety, you guys are coming in, off of straight fentanyl. And that's wild. And I'm not going to, and you old schoolers, please understand, I'm not poo-pooing saying that they've got it worse than we had it, but they kind of do. They really kind of do. Fentanyl, as addictive as heroin it was or is or whatever, I believe that coming off fentanyl probably is worse. But anyway, welcome to the community. Please don't get discouraged. It's going to be tough, but you're going to make it. You do have people who love you and are rooting for you. So anyway, there's that. Anyway, loved ones, please go to YouTube and find me, Matt Stevens, MSA. Give me some thumbs ups and all that good stuff and subscribe and all that. I want to start doing some live streams on there. I think that'll be a lot of fun. The possibilities are endless. So anyway, loved ones, that's what I got. And if you have anything you'd like to say to me, the hosting platform that I use, they have put in a Ask Matt button chat feature, which is very cool. So if you have anything you would like for me to talk about or whatever, anything you got on your mind, just say it. Or you can go to the YouTube channel and comment me there. You know, whatever you want to do. Remember, I love you, and I will be back directly.
Distance in the light.